Bhagvat Gita, Chapter 2, Part 1, Mortality and Immortality of the Soul. When the mind of Arjuna was troubled by sorrow and grief at the sight of his relatives and friends who stood before him, Sri Krishna said, "Thou hast lamented for those who do not deserve grief, and thou speakest the words of wisdom. For the wise ones do not lament those who are departed or separated." In order to remove grief and sorrow from the mind of Arjuna, Sri Krishna said those words. Why did he do this? Because the cause of grief and sorrow and all sufferings that we have during our lifetime is the ignorance of our true nature. He is wise who has realized the truth, and the wise one is never sorrowful, nor miserable, nor unhappy, because they know that ignorance or ajnana is the root of evil. Arjuna was born of the warrior caste, whose duty it was to fight a righteous battle or a just fight. That was his natural duty, and in spite of his duty, he has overcome with sorrow and grief and deluded himself into thinking that he was going to kill his relatives. His friends and relatives, near and dear ones, were going to be killed by him. The sense of I, aham pratyaya, was very strong on him. And from this sense of I proceeds self-delusion. And we limit or confine ourselves within a certain limit and then get attached to things that we do not really belong to us. The cause of this sorrow, as we shall see presently, is ignorance of our true self. We should not take the case of Arjuna as an individual instance, but we should take it in the general sense. In our everyday life, which we are passing through and are fighting with our environments, we say that things are ours, and so we are involved in grief and sorrow, and also in many other unpleasant feelings. But how are we going to overcome that? We know that if we are separated from our friends, there is the sense of sorrow or suffering. When a relative dies, we suffer, and this kind of suffering or grief is universal. And upon this foundation of grief or suffering is built the structure of this worldliness, samsara. Now, what do you know about samsara? The samsara means that which moves or goes on, and this movement is based upon the dual existence of pleasure and pain, happiness and unhappiness, etc. If we go to the very bottom of our experiences, we find grief, sorrow, and suffering everywhere. And unless we can remove that suffering, we cannot enjoy absolute happiness in this life. In truth, all kinds of pleasure that proceed from the contact of senses are mixed up with some kind of suffering or sorrow in the end. We cannot find any absolute happiness in this world of nescience or relativity. When we get certain pleasure from some sources, either coming in contact with some external objects or by having some good thoughts or ideals in our minds. When we get some pleasures of happiness, we try to keep that state of mind and enjoy it constantly. And there comes what we call attachment. From attachment proceeds delusion. We delude ourselves and cannot think of anything else. Just that very thing is constantly before our minds, and when, through some circumstances, we happen to lose that thing or are separated from that ideal or object, we feel unhappy and miserable. This is the way of the world. In the world, that which is evanescent and passing away, we think to be permanent. But in truth, everything is changing constantly, and we do not think of the changes. We take some points or phases of that changeful condition and try to hold that condition and keep it with us. After a certain time, we feel that it was slipped from our hold and we have lost it. Where has it gone? It is lost forever. We become extremely unhappy and miserable when we hold that thing and call it real, instead of looking at its true nature, which is evanescent, ephemeral, transitory, and constantly changing. If we think that it is real, permanent, and eternal, that will not be wise. A wise man is he who sees things and knows things as they are. If a thing be black, he must know it is as black, and not confound it with some other color, and not let our minds commit this mistake or error of colors. Then we have learned to see things as they are. That which is real, we must realize it, or see as real. And that which is not real, we must know it to be so, and that is the first duty of a wise man. In the study of Vedanta philosophy, many practice the yoga exercise. The object of studying Gita or practicing yoga is to realize that which is real and to separate the reality from that which is unreal. In the daily round of us and of our life, we go wherever we will. We should take this with us and make it a part of ourself and of our life. That which is real can never change. That which is not real can never become permanent if the conditions are changing.